For 5 years, I believed Olivia was the best thing that had ever happened to me. Whenever someone asked why I studied so hard, I always gave the same answer. I'm doing it for our future. Our future. Mason would laugh. Yeah. You know, most guys our age only think about passing exams. I smiled. I already know who I want to spend my life with. He shook his head. You're crazy. Maybe. You trust her too much. I trust her because she's earned it. He raised an eyebrow. You say that every time. Because it's true. He laughed. I hope you're right. So do I. At the time, I didn't know those words would stay with me for years. Olivia and I met during our first semester at the university. She sat beside me in Introduction to Economics. She leaned over before class started. Do you have a pen? I think so. You think so? I searched through my backpack. Here. She smiled. Thanks. That smile changed everything. After class, she caught up with me. You saved me. It was just a pen. It was still nice. I'm Ethan. I'm Olivia. From that moment, we were almost never apart. 5 years passed faster than I ever imagined. We studied together. We celebrated birthdays together. We stayed awake until 2 in the morning preparing for exams. When one of us failed a quiz, the other ordered pizza. When one of us succeeded, we celebrated like we had won the lottery. One evening we sat beside the river near campus. Olivia rested her head on my shoulder. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I smiled. Hopefully working somewhere I love. And? I'll come home every evening. To who? I looked at her. To my wife. She laughed. So confident. Shouldn't I be? She squeezed my hand. I hope you never stop saying things like that. I won't. I mean it. So do I. She kissed my cheek. I love you. I love you too. At that moment, I believed nothing could ever separate us. A few weeks later, my final research semester began. That was when I met Professor Adrian Hayes. Everyone respected him. Students talked about him like he was a genius. He never wastes compliments, one classmate whispered. If he praises you, you're special. I didn't expect him to notice me. After class, he called my name. Ethan. Yes, Professor? I read your research proposal. My heart raced. You did. I did. And? He smiled. You have real talent. I could barely speak. Thank you. I'd like you to work on my research project. I'd be honored. I expect a lot from my students. I won't disappoint you. I hope not. I walked out of his office feeling like my future had just become brighter. That evening I called Olivia. He chose me. I knew he would. You did. You're the smartest person I know. I laughed. I don't know about that. I do. I can't believe this. I'm proud of you. Those 4 words meant everything to me. Over the next few weeks, Professor Hayes became more than a teacher. He became my mentor. He gave me advice. He challenged my ideas. He introduced me to professors from other departments. Every opportunity felt like another step toward the career I had always wanted. Then something small changed. So small that I almost ignored it. Whenever I mentioned Professor Hayes, Olivia became strangely quiet. The professor liked my latest paper. Oh. He wants me to present it next month. That's nice. You don't sound excited. I'm just tired. You sure? She forced a smile. Of course. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? A few days later, Mason noticed it too. We were eating lunch outside the library. He looked at me. Can I ask you something? Sure. Has Olivia been acting different? I frowned. What do you mean? I don't know. He shrugged. She just seems distracted lately. She's stressed. You think so? Final semester. I guess. He wasn't convinced. Neither was I. But I refused to think the worst. Near the end of the week, Professor Hayes called both of us into his office. I've reviewed your research. He looked at me first. Excellent work. Thank you. Then he turned to Olivia. I'd like to discuss your academic future. She looked surprised. Really? You have potential. I'd appreciate that. He smiled politely. Ethan, you're free to leave. I'll only need Olivia for another 20 minutes. I stood up. No problem. Olivia looked at me. I'll meet you outside. Take your time. I smiled at both of them. I'll grab us coffee while I wait. Sounds good, she said. I closed the office door behind me without a second thought. As I walked toward the campus cafe, I felt lucky. I had the woman I loved. I had the professor I admired. I believed my future had finally fallen into place. I had no idea that, behind the door I had just closed, the first crack in my perfect life had already begun. The next morning, Olivia acted like nothing had happened. We met outside the library before class. She smiled. Morning. Morning. Did you sleep well? I did. You? She looked away for a second. I was exhausted. I waited almost an hour yesterday. I'm sorry. It's okay. What did you do? I grabbed coffee. And? I watched students rushing around campus. She forced a smile. I didn't realize Professor Hayes would keep me that long. He must really believe in you. Maybe. You deserve it. Thanks. She hugged me. For a moment, everything felt normal again. Or maybe I wanted it to. Over the next 2 weeks, little things started changing. At first, they didn't seem important. Then they became impossible to ignore. One evening, I called her. She answered after the 4th ring. Hey. Hey. You sound tired. I've been studying. Want me to come over? I can't. Why? I have too much work. I can help. No. The answer came too quickly. I mean. She sighed. I just need to focus tonight. Okay. We'll meet tomorrow. Promise. I promise. She hung up before I could say anything else. I stared at my phone. Something didn't feel right. The next day, we had lunch together. At least, we were supposed to. I waited outside the student center. 12 o'clock. 12:15. 12:30. Finally, my phone buzzed. Olivia, sorry. Something came up. Rain check? I called her immediately. She answered. I'm really sorry. What happened? Professor Hayes needed me. For lunch. It wasn't planned. You could have told me. I know. I've been waiting. I'm sorry. She sounded distracted. I'll make it up to you. It's okay. But it wasn't. That Friday, Mason dropped into the chair across from me. You look terrible. Thanks. I'm serious. I didn't sleep much. Thinking? I nodded. He leaned closer. Can I ask you something? You already did. This one matters. I laughed weakly. Go ahead. Do you trust Olivia? Of course. No. He shook his head. I mean completely. Yes. Without question. I frowned. Why are you asking? Because something feels off. What do you mean? I keep seeing her with Professor Hayes. So? It's becoming frequent. They're working together. Maybe. They are. He studied my face. I hope that's all it is. It is. You sound sure. I am. Even as I said it, something inside me whispered that I wasn't. A few days later, I met Olivia outside class. She was holding her phone tightly. The screen lit up. The moment she saw the message. She turned it over. Too quickly. I smiled. Who's texting you? No one. No one. She laughed nervously. Just spam. Since when do spam messages make you hide your phone? She slipped it into her pocket. I'm just tired. You've said that a lot lately. Because I am. I reached for her hand. She let me hold it. But her fingers felt cold. That afternoon, I bumped into Emma Collins. She and Olivia had been best friends since freshman year. Hey, Ethan. Hey. You looking for Olivia? Yeah. I think she's with. She stopped talking. With who? No one. You were about to say something. I forgot. You forgot. She forced a laugh. My brain's dead. I looked at her carefully. Emma. What? Is everything okay? She hesitated. Then she nodded. Yeah. You sure? Of course. But she walked away much faster than usual. I watched her disappear into the crowd. For some reason, my stomach tightened. The following week, Professor Hayes announced research assistants for a national conference. Everyone expected the top students to be chosen. Instead, he called Olivia's name first. Applause filled the classroom. She looked surprised. So do I get the position? Professor Hayes smiled. You've earned it. Then he looked at me. Ethan. Yes, Professor? I'll need you to stay focused on your current project. Of course. Something about his smile bothered me. It lasted a second too long. After class, I congratulated Olivia. This is amazing. I know. I'm proud of you. Thank you. You deserve it. She hugged me. But her eyes kept drifting toward Professor Hayes. I noticed. Then I immediately hated myself for noticing. That night, Mason came over. He placed 2 burgers on my kitchen table. I brought dinner. You're a good friend. I know. We ate in silence. Finally, he spoke. I still think something's wrong. Mason. I'm serious. You don't know Olivia. I know people. And? They change. Not her. You keep saying that. Because it's true. He sighed. I hope I'm wrong. So do I. A few nights later, I stayed late in the library. Around 9:30, I packed my bag and headed toward the parking lot. As I walked past the administration building, I saw Olivia. She stepped out of Professor Hayes' office. She looked around the hallway. Then she spotted me. Her eyes widened. Ethan? What are you doing here? I was studying. I smiled. What about you? She hesitated. Professor Hayes was helping me prepare for the conference. At this hour? He works late. I glanced toward the office. The door slowly closed behind her. Oh. She stepped closer. Don't overthink it. I'm not. You trust me, right? Without thinking. I nodded. Always. She smiled. Then she kissed my cheek. Good. As we walked toward the parking lot together, I kept hearing Mason's voice inside my head. Something feels off. For the first time in 5 years. I wasn't completely sure he was wrong. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about Mason's words. Something feels off. I had spent 5 years defending Olivia. 5 years believing she would never hurt me. So why did my heart suddenly feel so heavy? The next morning, I texted her. Me, good morning. 10 minutes passed. Nothing. 30 minutes. Still nothing. An hour later, she finally replied. Olivia, sorry. Busy morning. I smiled at my phone anyway. Then another message appeared. Olivia, talk later. That was it. No heart. No smile. No I love you. Just. Talk later. That afternoon, I found Mason outside the engineering building. He looked at me. You okay? I don't know. He didn't smile. What's wrong? I keep feeling like I'm losing her. He nodded slowly. I think you already know something. I don't want to believe it. I know. I keep making excuses. I know. I keep telling myself she's stressed. And? What if I'm lying to myself? He looked me straight in the eyes. Then stopped guessing. What do you mean? Find the truth. I stared at him. What if the truth destroys me? He took a deep breath. It'll hurt. I know. But living a lie hurts longer. That evening, Emma called me. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. Hello? Ethan. Her voice sounded nervous. Can we meet? Now. Please. Something inside me tightened. Where? The old coffee shop near campus. I'll be there. 20 minutes later, Emma was already waiting. She looked like she hadn't slept. Dark circles surrounded her eyes. She couldn't even look at me. I sat down. What's going on? She stayed silent. Emma? She whispered. I'm sorry. For what? I should have told you sooner. My heart started racing. Told me what? She closed her eyes. I can't keep lying. I leaned forward. Emma. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. Olivia has been seeing Professor Hayes. The world suddenly became silent. I don't understand. They've been spending time together. They're working together. She slowly shook her head. No. I forced a laugh. You're mistaken. I wish I was. Olivia loves me. Emma started crying. I know she used to. Every word felt like a knife. When did this start? I don't know exactly. You're lying. I wish I was. Tell me she's not cheating. She couldn't answer. That silence said everything. I left the cafe without saying goodbye. My hands were shaking. My mind kept repeating the same sentence. No. 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 There had to be another explanation. There had to be. The next evening, Olivia texted me first. Olivia, I'm studying tonight. I stared at the message. Then I replied. Me, good luck. 5 minutes later, I got into my car. I hated myself for what I was doing. I had never followed anyone before. I had never checked her location. I had never doubted her. But tonight, I needed the truth. I parked across the street from her apartment. 10 minutes later, she walked outside. She wasn't carrying books. She wasn't dressed for studying. She got into her car. I followed from a distance. She drove across town. Not toward the university. Not toward the library. She stopped outside a luxury apartment building. My heart started pounding. I watched her step out. A minute later, Professor Hayes arrived. He smiled the moment he saw her. She smiled back. He gently touched her face. I felt sick. Then, he kissed her. Not on the cheek. Not like friends. He kissed her the way she used to kiss me. My hands slipped from the steering wheel. I couldn't breathe. 5 years. 5 years. And it ended in one moment. I don't remember getting out of my car. I only remember running. By the time the apartment door opened, they both turned toward me. Olivia's face went white. Ethan. Professor Hayes didn't move. He simply looked at me. Calm. Almost amused. I looked at Olivia. Tell me I didn't just see that. She couldn't. Please. Tears filled my eyes. Tell me this isn't real. She lowered her head. I'm sorry. I took a step back. No. Ethan. No. I pointed at Professor Hayes. Tell me he's lying. He isn't. My voice broke. How long? She stayed quiet. How long? Finally, she whispered. Almost a year. The words shattered something inside me. A year. She nodded. I never wanted to hurt you. I laughed. It didn't even sound human. You've been hurting me every single day. She started crying. I didn't know how to end it. So you chose to lie. I was scared. I looked at Professor Hayes. He crossed his arms. You should leave. I stared at him. You think this is okay? He answered without emotion. Life isn't about emotions. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What? People choose what benefits them. You were my professor. And? You were supposed to guide me. I guided your career. You stole my life. He shrugged. Your relationship was never my responsibility. I looked back at Olivia. You listened to this. She wiped away tears. I thought. You thought what? He understood my ambitions. And I didn't. You always wanted a simple life. I couldn't believe her words. I wanted a future with you. I know. I worked every day for us. I know. I loved you. She closed her eyes. I know. I felt my knees growing weak. Every dream we had shared, every promise, every late-night conversation, every plan for our future, none of it had been real for the last year. I looked around the apartment. Suddenly, everything made sense. The cancelled dates, the hidden phone, the late meetings, the lies. Mason had seen it. Emma had known it. Even strangers had probably noticed. I was the only person still believing our love story. I walked toward the door. Ethan. Olivia reached for my hand. I stepped away. Don't. I'm sorry. I looked at her one last time. No. My voice was barely a whisper. You're only sorry because I finally found out. Neither of them answered. I walked out of the apartment. The cold night air hit my face. I stood beside my car for several minutes. Then I finally broke. For the first time since I was a little boy. I cried without trying to stop myself. Not because I had lost the woman I loved, but because I finally realized I had been the only one still fighting for us. I didn't go back to class the next day, or the day after that. I turned off my phone, closed my curtains, Ignored every message. I just sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor. 5 years. I kept hearing those words. Almost a year. She had been lying to me for almost a year. Every I love you. Every hug. Every kiss. Every promise. None of them meant what I thought they did. My phone rang again. Mason. I let it ring. A minute later, it rang again. Then again. Finally, I answered. What? You sound terrible. I am. I'm coming over. You don't have to. I'm already outside. I looked through the window. His car was parked in front of my apartment. A few moments later, he walked in carrying 2 bags of food. He looked around my apartment. Ethan. What? When was the last time you ate? I'm not hungry. He placed the food on the table. I didn't ask if you were hungry. I stayed quiet. He sighed. You can't disappear. I already have. No. He sat across from me. You got hurt. My life is over. No, it isn't. You didn't see them. I know. You don't know. I know enough. I looked at him. I trusted both of them. I know. I defended them. I know. I made excuses for them. I know. He leaned forward. But listen to me. I didn't answer. They betrayed you. I closed my eyes. That doesn't mean you should betray yourself. A week later, I finally returned to campus. The moment I stepped inside the engineering building, conversation stopped. People looked at me, then looked away. I hated it. I walked into class. Professor Hayes was already there. He didn't even blink. Good morning, everyone. As if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't destroyed my life. The lecture continued. Halfway through class, he handed back our latest research evaluations. He stopped beside my desk. Ethan. I looked up. This isn't your best work. I stared at the paper. A failing grade. My heart sank. I knew that report deserved better. After class, I followed him outside. Professor. He turned around. Yes? I want to talk. I'm busy. It'll only take a minute. He looked annoyed. What is it? My report. What about it? I followed every requirement. So? I don't understand the grade. He smiled slightly. Perhaps you're distracted. You know that's not true. Then prove it. I clenched my fists. You failed me because of what happened. His expression never changed. Be careful with accusations. You know exactly what you're doing. He stepped closer. Life moves on, Ethan. I stared at him. You should do the same. Then he walked away. That afternoon, I saw Olivia across the courtyard. She saw me too. For a second, it looked like she wanted to come over. Instead, she turned around and walked in the opposite direction. Like I had never existed. That hurt even more than the affair. 5 years together. Reduced to strangers. My grades kept falling. I couldn't focus. I read the same page 10 times. Nothing stayed in my mind. One afternoon, I failed a presentation. After class, I sat alone outside the library. Mason found me there. You skipped lunch. I'm not hungry. You keep saying that. I mean it. He sat beside me. You're losing yourself. I already lost everything. No. Yes. You still have your future. I laughed bitterly. My future. Yes. The professor controls my research. We'll find another way. There isn't one. There always is. I looked at him. How can you still believe that? Because I believe in you. His words stayed with me long after he left. The following Monday, Mason texted me an address. Be here at 3 o'clock. No excuses. I replied immediately. Where is this? Just trust me. I almost didn't go. But something told me to leave my apartment. At exactly 3 o'clock, I walked into a small counseling office. Mason stood up. There you are. I frowned. What is this? Help. I don't need therapy. You need someone to talk to. I can talk to you. You don't tell me everything. I looked away. A woman walked into the room. She smiled kindly. You must be Ethan. I guess. I'm Sarah. I nodded politely. I'm a counselor. I know. She pointed toward the chair. Would you like to sit? I don't know. That's okay. Her voice was calm. We can just talk. I slowly sat down. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Finally, she asked, "What's hurting the most?" I answered without thinking. I wasn't enough. She looked at me carefully. Who told you that? I frowned. No one. Then why do you believe it? I didn't have an answer. She continued gently. When someone betrays you. She paused. Their decision says more about them than it says about you. I stared at the floor. I keep wondering what I did wrong. What if the answer is, nothing? I looked up. Nothing? You loved someone. Yes. You trusted someone. Yes. Neither of those things is a mistake. They feel like one. I understand. She smiled softly. But trust isn't weakness. I felt tears forming. It feels like weakness. No. She shook her head. Deceiving someone is weakness. Using people is weakness. Lying for a year is weakness. She leaned forward. But loving honestly? She smiled. That takes courage. For the first time in weeks. I couldn't argue with anyone. I kept meeting Sarah every week. She never told me what I should feel. She simply listened. One afternoon she asked, if revenge became possible tomorrow. I thought for a moment. I'd take it. Would you? I think so. What would happen the day after? I stayed quiet. And the day after that? I don't know. She nodded. Because revenge ends quickly. What doesn't? Healing. I looked at her. So what do I do? She smiled. You stop asking how to hurt them. And? You start asking how to protect yourself. That evening, I walked back to my apartment. For the first time since everything fell apart. I wasn't thinking about making Olivia suffer. I wasn't thinking about yelling at Professor Hayes. I was thinking about something else. The truth. If they had lied to me for a year, then there had to be evidence. And if there was evidence, I didn't need anger. I needed proof. As I unlocked my apartment door, I made myself one promise. I would never beg either of them for answers again. The next time they saw me, I wouldn't be the broken man they left behind. I'd be the man who exposed everything they thought they could hide. The next morning, I stopped looking at old photos. I stopped reading old messages. I stopped asking myself why Olivia had chosen him. That question wasn't going to change anything. I needed answers. Real ones. And this time, I needed proof. My phone buzzed. It was Emma. Emma, can we meet? I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I replied. Me, where? Emma, the cafe near the library. Me, I'll be there. Emma was already waiting when I arrived. She looked nervous. She kept looking over her shoulder. I sat down. You sounded serious. I am. She slid a small flash drive across the table. I frowned. What's this? Everything I have. What do you mean? I couldn't keep watching this happen. I picked up the drive. What's on it? Messages. My heart skipped a beat. What kind of messages? She swallowed. Messages between Olivia and Professor Hayes. I looked at her. How did you get them? Olivia used my laptop one night. And? She forgot to log out. I stayed silent. I know it was wrong. So why did you do it? She looked down. Because I finally realized what she was doing to you. Tears filled her eyes. I should have told you months ago. I nodded slowly. But you're telling me now. I'm sorry. I know. That evening, I opened the flash drive. There were dozens of screenshots. Late-night conversations. Private meetings. Hotel reservations. Photos. My hands started shaking. One message caught my attention. Hayes, don't worry about Ethan. He'll never suspect us. Another. Olivia, he trusts both of us too much. I closed my laptop. For several minutes, I couldn't breathe. I wasn't crying anymore. I was angry. Not the kind of anger that makes someone scream. The kind that becomes quiet. Dangerously quiet. The following afternoon, Mason came over. He noticed the papers spread across my table. What happened? I handed him the flash drive. He spent nearly an hour reading everything. When he finally looked up, His face had changed. They really thought they'd never get caught. I know. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. He leaned back. You need to be smart. I will. No emotional decisions. I promise. He pointed at the laptop. This is evidence. I know. Protect it. I will. And make copies. I already did. For the first time in weeks. He smiled. That's the Ethan I know. A few days later, Sarah asked me the same question she always asked. How are you feeling? I answered honestly. Angry. Good. I frowned. Good. You're finally admitting it. I hate them. I know. I want them to lose everything. She nodded. That's normal. It is? Yes. She leaned forward. But don't let your anger become your identity. What does that mean? If revenge is all you have. She smiled gently. Then they still control your life. I looked down. I don't want that. I know. So what should I do? Tell the truth. That's all? Truth is stronger than rage. Her words stayed with me all day. The next week, I noticed Olivia watching me. Every time we crossed paths on campus. She looked nervous. Almost frightened. Finally, she stopped me outside the student center. Ethan. I kept walking. Please. I turned around. What? Can we talk? About what? Us. There is no us. She lowered her head. I know you're angry. You don't know anything about how I feel. She looked around carefully. Have you told anyone? I frowned. Why? No reason. That's not an answer. She forced a smile. I just wanted to know. I took one step closer. Are you worried? Her face changed. I didn't wait for an answer. I walked away. For the first time, she was the one watching me leave. That same afternoon, I passed Professor Hayes in the hallway. He smiled confidently. Ethan. Professor. I heard you've been struggling lately. I'm doing better. I'm glad. He adjusted his tie. I'd hate to see personal matters interfere with your future. I looked directly into his eyes. My future will be just fine. He smiled again. Confidence is important. So is honesty. His smile disappeared for a second. Then it returned. You'll learn that the world isn't always fair. I nodded. You're right. He looked satisfied. Then I added. But sometimes the truth catches up anyway. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. Only for a moment. But it was there. Over the next several days, Mason and I organized everything. Screenshots. Emails. Research schedules. Building entry logs. Conference records. Every piece fit together. Every lie had left a trail. Emma continued helping quietly. I found something else. She handed me another folder. What is it? Professor Hayes recommended Olivia for conferences she wasn't qualified for. Because of the affair? I think so. I nodded slowly. This is bigger than I thought. She looked guilty. I'm sorry. You've already apologized. I know. I appreciate that you're helping now. She smiled weakly. I just want to do one thing right. A week later, I stood outside the administration building. A thick folder rested in my hands. Everything was inside. Messages. Photos. Emails. Witness statements. Academic records. Months of deception. Mason looked at me. You ready? I took a deep breath. No. He smiled. Good. What? Courage isn't doing something because you're fearless. He placed a hand on my shoulder. It's doing it while you're terrified. I looked at the building. Then back at him. Thank you. You don't have to thank me. I do. He nodded. Go finish this. I walked into Dean Foster's office. He looked up from his desk. You must be Ethan. Yes, sir. Please, sit down. I remained standing. I won't take much of your time. He noticed the folder. What's this? I placed it carefully on his desk. My evidence. He looked confused. Evidence of what? I met his eyes. Evidence that Professor Adrian Hayes abused his position, manipulated students, and carried on a secret relationship with my girlfriend while serving as her academic supervisor. The room became completely silent. Dean Foster slowly rested his hand on the folder. Then he looked back at me. If what's inside this file is true. He paused. Everything at this university is about to change. 3 days after I submitted the evidence, Dean Foster called me. Ethan, the university has opened an official investigation. I closed my eyes. So, it finally started. Yes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. The truth still has to be proven. I understand. Within days, the entire campus was talking. Students whispered in hallways. Professors avoided questions. Nobody knew who had reported Professor Hayes. But everyone knew something was terribly wrong. Mason smiled when he saw me. You did the right thing. I hope so. No. He shook his head. I know so. The investigation moved quickly. More students were interviewed. Then something unexpected happened. More women came forward. One after another, they shared stories that sounded painfully familiar. Private meetings. Special treatment. Broken promises. I realized Olivia had never been the only one. She had simply been another victim who believed she was special. A few days later, I saw Professor Hayes leaving the administration building. His confidence was gone. He stopped in front of me. You caused all of this. I looked him straight in the eyes. No. You ruined my career. You ruined it yourself. His jaw tightened. You'll regret this. I answered calmly. I already regretted trusting you. Without another word, he walked away. For the first time, he looked afraid. That evening, Olivia called me. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. Ethan, please meet me. I stayed silent. I just want to talk. Against my better judgment, I agreed. She was waiting at the park where we used to spend our evenings together. Her eyes were swollen from crying. I know about the investigation, she whispered. I figured. They questioned me today. I nodded. They also questioned other women. She looked down. I didn't know there were so many. Neither did I. He told all of us we were different. A bitter laugh escaped her. I believed every word. I looked at her quietly. I trusted him. I trusted both of you. Tears rolled down her face. I'm sorry. I didn't answer. After a long silence, she looked at me again. Can you help me? Help you how? Please tell them I made a mistake. I slowly shook my head. I can't. I'll lose everything. I took a deep breath. I lost everything the day I found out the truth. She lowered her head. For the first time, she had no excuse left. The next afternoon, I received another unexpected call. Ethan? Yes. This is Daniel Brooks, Olivia's father. My heart skipped a beat. I'd like to meet you. We met at a quiet cafe. The moment he sat down, he sighed. I came here to apologize. You don't owe me anything. I do. He looked ashamed. You treated my daughter with respect. I loved her. I know. He shook his head. And she threw that away. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he quietly said, You deserved better. Those 3 words brought me more peace than he could ever imagine. A week later, the university made its decision. Professor Adrian Hayes was officially suspended while the investigation continued. Students watched as he carried a small box out of his office. Nobody applauded. Nobody defended him. They simply watched. Mason stood beside me. How do you feel? I watched Professor Hayes disappear across the parking lot. I thought I'd feel happy. And? I don't. What do you feel? I smiled for the first time in months. Free. As I walked away, I finally understood something. Karma didn't need my anger. It only needed the truth. 6 months passed. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't counting the days since my heart was broken. I was counting the new opportunities in front of me. Every week, I met with Sarah. Every week, I felt a little stronger. One afternoon, she smiled at me. You look different. I do. You're smiling. I laughed. I didn't even notice. That's because it happened naturally. I nodded. I guess I'm finally moving forward. She smiled. I think you already have. Life slowly found its rhythm again. I focused on my classes. My grades improved. I started sleeping better. Even Mason noticed the change. We were having coffee near campus when he looked at me and laughed. What? I haven't seen you this relaxed in years. I feel lighter. I can tell. He raised his cup. To new beginnings. I smiled and raised mine. To better days. A few weeks later, Sarah introduced me to her older brother. This is Noah. He smiled and shook my hand. I've heard a lot about you. I hope only the good things. Sarah laughed. Mostly. Noah sat across from me. Sarah told me you're studying software engineering. That's right. My company is growing. I looked at him. And? We're looking for someone hardworking. You mean, me? If you're interested. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'd love the opportunity. Good. He smiled. Then let's build something together. For the first time in months, I felt excited about the future. Working with Noah changed everything. He trusted my ideas. He listened to my opinions. Instead of reminding me of my mistakes, he reminded me of my potential. One evening, he stopped by my desk. Nice work today. Thanks. You've got talent. I smiled. I almost forgot that. Don't. He pointed toward the screen. The wrong people made you question yourself. I nodded quietly. They don't get to decide who you become. One afternoon, as I walked out of the office, I heard a familiar voice. Ethan. I turned around. Olivia was standing across the street. She looked different. She looked tired. She slowly walked toward me. Can we talk? I hesitated. For 5 minutes. Thank you. We sat on a nearby bench. She stared at her hands. I've been trying to reach you. I know. You never answered. I didn't have anything to say. She nodded. I understand. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I looked at her. I know. I lost someone who truly loved me. You did. I think about it every day. I stayed quiet. She looked up. Do you ever think about us? I smiled sadly. I think about who I used to be. And? I don't want to become him again. Tears filled her eyes. I miss you. I believe you. Can we start over? I slowly shook my head. No. Why? Because I finally respect myself. She lowered her head. I deserve that. You deserve honesty. I know. And so do I. She stood to leave. Before walking away, she turned back. I really am sorry. This time? I believed her. I know. She gave me one last smile. Then she disappeared into the crowd. I didn't follow her. I didn't want to. Some doors were meant to stay closed. That evening, I met Mason for dinner. He noticed the smile on my face. What happened? I saw Olivia. He raised an eyebrow. And? She apologized. How'd that go? I wished her well. That's it. That's it. He laughed. Old Ethan would have taken her back. I know. What changed? I looked out the window. I finally realized my worth. Mason smiled proudly. I've been waiting to hear you say that. Later that night, Sarah called. How are you feeling? Peaceful. Did something happen? I closed a chapter of my life. And? I'm ready to start the next one. She laughed softly. I knew you'd get here. It took longer than I expected. The important thing is. She paused. You got here. I smiled. Thank you. You did the hard part, Ethan. No. I looked around my apartment. For the first time, it finally felt like home again. You and Mason never let me give up. We simply reminded you who you were. After the call ended, I stood by the window and looked at the city lights. Months ago, I believed losing Olivia had destroyed my future. Now I understood the truth. Losing her had forced me to find myself. And the man I was becoming was stronger than the man she had betrayed. Almost a year had passed since I exposed the truth. By then, my life looked completely different. I enjoyed my work with Noah. I had finished my degree. I laughed more. I slept peacefully. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving. I was living. One morning, Mason called me. You busy? Not really. You should check the news. Why? They finally announced the decision. My heart skipped a beat. I opened my laptop. There it was. Professor Adrian Hayes had been permanently dismissed from the university. His teaching license was under review. Several former students had filed legal complaints. The investigation had confirmed that he abused his position for personal relationships. I stared at the screen. Mason spoke again. You okay? I thought I'd feel happier. And? I just feel finished. He laughed softly. That's probably healthier. I think you're right. Later that afternoon, Noah walked into my office. I heard about your professor. So did everyone else. He nodded. Looks like the truth finally won. It did. He smiled. You earned this peace. I shook my head. No. They earned their consequences. A few weeks later, I was leaving work when I heard someone call my name. Ethan. I turned around. Olivia. She looked thinner than I remembered. The confidence she once carried had disappeared. She walked toward me slowly. Can we talk? I looked at my watch. I only have a few minutes. She nodded. That's enough. We walked to a nearby bench. She didn't speak right away. Finally, she whispered, I couldn't find a job. I stayed quiet. Every interview ends the same way. She looked down. They already know about the scandal. I felt sorry for her. But I didn't feel responsible. She wiped away a tear. I ruined my own future. I nodded. Yes. I kept blaming everyone else. She looked at me. But the truth is. She took a deep breath. I made my own choices. For the first time, she wasn't making excuses. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. I don't expect you to come back. You shouldn't. I don't expect another chance. You won't get one. She nodded slowly. I know. Silence settled between us. Then she asked, Can I ask you one last question? You can. Do you hate me? I thought about it carefully. Months ago, the answer would have been yes. Now, it was different. I slowly shook my head. No. She looked surprised. You don't? I don't have room for hate anymore. Her eyes filled with tears. So, you forgive me? I smiled gently. I forgive you for my own peace. She stared at me. Not because you earned it. Her shoulders dropped. I understand. I don't forgive what you did. I know. I forgive because I don't want to carry that pain for the rest of my life. She nodded. Thank you. Those were the last words she ever said to me. She stood up. Gave me one final look. Then quietly walked away. This time, neither of us looked back. That evening, I met Mason for dinner. He noticed something immediately. You look different. I feel different. What happened? I forgave Olivia. He almost dropped his drink. You what? I laughed. Relax. I'm serious. So am I. After everything? I nodded. I didn't forgive her for her. Then why? Because I was tired of carrying the weight. He smiled. I guess you've learned something. I have. What's that? Bitterness only keeps the past alive. He raised his glass. To freedom. I raised mine. To freedom. A few days later, I visited the university one last time. Students hurried across campus. Professors walked between buildings. Life had moved on. I stopped outside the engineering building. The office that once belonged to Professor Hayes was empty. His name had already been removed from the door. It was as if he had never been there. I smiled to myself. Not because he had fallen, but because I had survived. As I walked toward the parking lot, I realized something. The greatest revenge had never been exposing the lies. It had never been watching Professor Hayes lose his career. It had never been seeing Olivia regret her choices. The greatest revenge was becoming someone they could never break again. 3 years passed. Sometimes, it still amazed me how much life could change. The man who once cried outside Professor Hayes' apartment no longer existed. I had built a career I loved. Noah's company had grown faster than any of us expected. I was leading projects I had once only dreamed about. Every morning, I walked into the office with confidence. Not because life was perfect, but because I had finally found peace. One afternoon, Noah smiled at me. You've changed. I hope that's a good thing. It is. He laughed. The first day we met, you looked like the world had ended. I thought it had. And now? I looked around the office. Now I know it was just the beginning. He nodded proudly. I always knew you'd make it. I'm glad one of us did. That evening, I met Mason for dinner. Some things never changed. He still arrived late. He still ordered too much food. He still made terrible jokes. He looked at me and smiled. You know what? What? I miss the old Ethan. I laughed. The depressed one? No. The guy who always paid for dinner. I shook my head. Nice try. He laughed. There he is. We spent hours talking. Not about Olivia. Not about Professor Hayes. Just about life. As we walked outside, Mason looked at me. I'm proud of you. For what? You could have let that betrayal destroy you. I almost did. But you didn't. I smiled. Thanks to people like you. He pulled me into a hug. You would have done the same for me. I would have. A week later, Sarah invited me for coffee. She looked at me and smiled. I think this is our last session. I raised an eyebrow. You're firing me? She laughed. No. You don't need me anymore. I'll always appreciate what you did. You did the hard work. I shook my head. You helped me believe in myself again. She smiled. Then promise me one thing. What? If life hurts you again. I listened carefully. Don't close your heart. I smiled. I promise. A few days later, I received an invitation from the university. They were celebrating the success of former graduates. For a moment, I thought about throwing it away. Instead, I decided to go. Not for the memories. For myself. Walking across campus felt strange. Everything looked familiar. The library. The courtyard. The cafe where I first met Olivia. I smiled sadly. Not because I missed her. Because I remembered the young man I used to be. Naive. Hopeful. Completely in love. I wasn't ashamed of him anymore. He had simply trusted the wrong people. As I walked through the engineering building, Dean Foster recognized me. Ethan. Dean Foster. He shook my hand. It's good to see you. You too. He smiled. I've been following your career. I've been lucky. He shook his head. No. You earned it. For a moment, we stood in silence. Then he said, I also wanted to thank you. I looked surprised. For what? You had the courage to speak when others stayed silent. I only told the truth. Sometimes. He smiled. That's the hardest thing to do. Before leaving campus, I walked past the office that once belonged to Professor Hayes. Someone else's name was on the door now. Life had moved on. And so had I. That evening, I stopped by the river where Olivia and I once talked about our future. I stood there for several minutes. The water moved just as quietly as it had years ago. Only one thing had changed. Me. I smiled as I looked across the river. If I could speak to the man I used to be. I whispered the words to myself. I'd tell him not to beg for people who don't value him. I'd tell him that heartbreak isn't the end. I'd tell him that one betrayal can become the beginning of a better life. The wind carried my words away. As I turned to leave, my phone rang. It was Mason. Where are you? At the river. Thinking too much. I laughed. Maybe. Hurry up. Why? Dinner's getting cold. I'll be there. And Ethan? Yeah? I'm glad you're still here. I smiled. So am I. I ended the call and looked at the river one last time. Years ago, I believed losing Olivia had destroyed my future. Now I knew the truth. She didn't destroy my life. She revealed who truly deserved a place in it. I walked toward my car without looking back. Not because the past no longer mattered, but because it no longer controlled me. Some people enter our lives to love us. Others enter to teach us. Olivia and Professor Hayes taught me the hardest lesson of all. Never build your future on someone else's promises. Build it on your own strength. As I drove home, I smiled. Not because I had won. Not because they had lost. But because I had finally become the man I was always meant to be. And that was a victory no one could ever take away from me. 5 years passed. Sometimes, I still couldn't believe how different my life had become. The pain that once kept me awake every night had become nothing more than a distant memory. I no longer woke up wondering why Olivia had betrayed me. I woke up thinking about the future I had built with my own hands. Every morning, I unlocked the door to my office with a smile. Not because life was perfect, but because it was finally mine. One afternoon, Noah walked into my office. He looked around and smiled. "Remember your first day here?" I laughed. I was terrified. "You barely spoke." I wasn't sure I belonged. "And now?" I looked at the team working around us. "Now this place feels like home." He nodded proudly. "You earned every bit of this." I had good people beside me. He smiled. So did I. That evening, Mason invited me to dinner. Some friendships never changed. He was still loud. Still impossible to embarrass. Still the first person to make me laugh when life became serious. He raised his glass. "To the guy who proved me wrong." I laughed. What did I prove? "I honestly thought you'd never recover." So did I. But here you are. He smiled. Happier than ever. I looked at him. "I wouldn't have made it without you." He shook his head. "You would have. Maybe. But it would have taken a lot longer." He grinned. "That's what best friends are for." A few weeks later, I was walking through the city after work. People hurried past me. Cars filled the streets. It was just another ordinary evening. Then, I saw someone standing across the road. Olivia. She looked older than I remembered. Not because of age. Because of regret. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she slowly walked toward me. "Hi, Ethan." "Hi. It's been a long time." "It has." She smiled sadly. "You look happy." "I am. I'm glad." There was an awkward silence. Finally, she spoke again. "I've wanted to apologize one last time." I listened quietly. "I spent years blaming Professor Hayes." She looked down. "Then I blamed my career." She took a deep breath. "But the truth is." She looked into my eyes. "I destroyed my own life." I didn't interrupt. I traded real love for temporary ambition. A tear rolled down her cheek. And I lost both. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel satisfaction. I simply felt peace. She wiped her eyes. "I don't expect another chance." "You shouldn't." "I know. I just wanted you to know." She paused. "I'm truly sorry." I smiled gently. "Thank you." She looked surprised. "That's all?" "That's all. You don't hate me?" I slowly shook my head. "No. You don't?" "I left that pain behind years ago." She nodded. "I wish I had your strength." I answered quietly. "It wasn't strength." She looked at me. "It was a choice." She smiled through her tears. "I hope life keeps being kind to you." I smiled back. "I hope you find peace too." She nodded. Then she quietly walked away. This time, I never looked back. Some stories deserve another chapter. Ours didn't. That night, I drove home. The city lights reflected across the windshield. I thought about everything that had happened. The lies. The heartbreak. The sleepless nights. The betrayal that once convinced me my life was over. I smiled to myself. It hadn't been the end. It had been the beginning. When I arrived home, I stood outside for a moment and looked at the sky. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Mason. "Still smiling?" I laughed and replied. "More than ever." A second later, another message appeared. "Proud of you, brother." I looked at the screen for a moment before putting my phone away. Years ago, I believed losing Olivia had taken everything from me. I couldn't have been more wrong. It gave me the chance to rebuild my life with stronger foundations. It taught me the value of self-respect. It showed me who my real friends were. Most importantly, it taught me that no relationship is worth losing yourself. I unlocked my front door and stepped inside. The silence no longer felt lonely. It felt peaceful. As I looked around the home I had built, I realized I wasn't grateful for the betrayal. But I was grateful for the person I became because I survived it. I walked to the window and looked toward the future. Then I smiled. Not because my past had disappeared, but because it no longer had the power to define me. My story didn't end with betrayal. It didn't end with revenge. It ended with freedom. And as I closed the curtains and turned off the lights, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. No one would ever break me again.